Let's start this edition of the show with the scandal that is currently engulfing all of Canadian soccer. It started last week, of course, when the Canadian women's national team had a staff member who was apparently caught using a drone to spy on New Zealand's closed training session at the Olympics. As a result of that, head coach Bev Priestman, an assistant coach, and a staffer have all been sent home. Priestman is looking at a one-year suspension from coaching. On top of that, the Canadian team has been docked 6 points, so they actually have 0 points right now, despite winning their first 2 games in France. Here's a statement from the Canadian Soccer Federation as well as the Canadian Olympic Committee explaining their appeal of the 6-point sanction against the women's national team, claiming it's unfairly punishing the athletes. This came after reports from TSN, which said the practice of spying had actually been going on for a long time in Canada on both the men's and women's side of the program, which begs the question, where did it all begin? That brings us to John Herdman, now, of course, at Toronto FC. Before that, the head coach of the men's national team for Canada. Before that, the head coach of the women's national team for Canada, where you guessed it, Bev Priestman was one of his assistants. Herdman was asked about the scandal last week. Here's what he had to say.
But for me, this is about the players. We're really putting spotlight on something that isn't, what this Olympics is about, which is their talent and their moment to shine. And I think the quicker we get back there, the better. This isn't Olympic Games. It's the biggest event on the planet. It's a sporting event that has massive integrity. And for me, we have to make sure that those things are upheld always. I've always gone into Olympic Games, World Cups, big events with integrity in mind and the ability to compete at the highest level, following the rules and processes. So, from my side, as I say, I'll help Canada soccer where I can with that review. But I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach at an Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities.
Okay, Herc, so the latest details in the reporting on this are pretty damning. Credit to Rick Westhead. He's the reporter for TSN up in Canada that's breaking a lot of this, claiming that spying was happening with the women's national team at the Tokyo Olympics 3 years ago, where, of course, they won the gold medal. Also with the men's national team in the lead up to the 2022 World Cup. Overall, what kind of questions, Herc, does this raise for you about all of Canadian soccer's recent successes?
You'll find no bigger fan of Canadian soccer and what they've done in the last 3-4 years than the guy sitting right here. You've made fun of me. He's looking for a Canadian passport, et cetera, et cetera. I've been a big proponent on how much they've grown in the lead up to 2022 in Qatar. Now this generation, you got to tell me that all that is going to be put into doubt over this? And it's not just some light thing. I've heard responses online. I've heard former players, colleagues today. Well, you still got to go out there and execute. Even if you cheated, it doesn't really matter. We're missing the big picture. And by the way, it does matter. This casts doubt now to all that hard work, each brick that has been laid by those before them, every single ounce of success that they had. We now have to ask ourselves if they did it in a fair and responsible way or if they were aided by cheating. Whether you believe that is a little cheating or a lot of cheating, it doesn't matter. It is cheating. And John Herdman, I've sat here and said he's the best coach in CONCACAF when he was leading this team. To know that now these reports surface, and listen, it's still until proven guilty, right? I'm not going to cast judgment on him yet, but God, if these reports are true, and I think this is the tip of the iceberg, I think more is going to come out. I think that the more you pull that string, the sweater's going to come undone. If these reports are true, if Bev Priestman got a year, I cannot imagine what somebody who was in charge for multiple international events on both sides is going to get. It's as damning as you can get to Canadian soccer, and they don't deserve it after everything they've been through. The men and women with Canada Business Soccer and how they've put them behind the 8 ball and the lack of funding and what they had to go through in the past and what they're trying to accomplish now. And Jesse Marsh and these women who are at this Olympic event, it's as damning as it can get.
So I think there's some names that we're going to focus a lot of the blame on, justifiably so. Obviously, John Herdman, if all of this is proven true, is right at the top of that list. But can we, for a moment, Herc, acknowledge kind of the organizational failure here? Because we've been talking to what you just mentioned about off-field issues with the Canadian Soccer Federation for quite some time now. Most of those issues have had to do with money. And so I think when you have those issues, there's going to be an obvious trickle-down. Right? And I think about the people in charge of Canadian soccer over the long course here. And it's people who are not just still in charge of Canadian soccer, they're getting promotions. Victor Montagliani is the president of Canadian soccer during the majority of this time. He's now in charge of CONCACAF, and he's the vice president of FIFA. So there's some real deep issues in terms of leadership at Canadian soccer that need to be addressed. As far as what this means for the past of the program, Herc, I'm with you. To me, it calls into question everything because Herdman's been around for a long time. He took over the women's national team in 2011. They win bronze medal and really kind of get over a hump they hadn't been able to clear in 2012 at the Olympics. You can call that into question. I think you can call into question in 2016 when they got, again, another medal at the Olympics. And then what he did with the men's national team. Let's not forget, Herc, what Canada was before this guy got here. They were a team that was not only not qualifying for World Cups, they were not qualifying for the last round of qualifying for World Cups. They were missing out on the hex. Suddenly John Herdman shows up. There's a change, and now they're not just competitive, but they're maybe the best team in the region. It calls it all into question for me. And finally, what it does is it calls him into question. Do you really believe that John Herdman is as good as a coach as you did a week and a half or 2 weeks ago? I'm sorry, Herc, but I don't. I just can't believe that there's no link, there's no coincidence between this long history and the sudden uptick of success for Canadian soccer. Now to the other question here, which is it fair? I come down on it this way, Herc. I do think that the 6-point sanction, even though the Canadian Soccer Federation, the Olympic Committee are appealing it, I do think it's fair. Because I think when you get caught cheating at the Olympics, the expectation for me would be that you're going home. And I bet you there's some players on that Canadian team that thought when this broke, they might be going home. They have not been eliminated yet. The 6-point sanction is severe, but because of their good play in the first 2 games, they're still very much alive. They could even still win their group if they get it done in the group phase finale. So for me, Herc, is the penalty harsh? Is it specifically harsh on the players? Yes. But is it unfair? No. They cheated. They got caught cheating at the Olympics, and I don't know how you could leave them in with any less of a sanction and feel like you were being fair to everybody else.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think, and I'm not saying it's 6 points is fair or unfair, do you think the 6 points deduction in question right now is only the cheating in this Olympics, or what we've seen, the reports that have put into question Canada's constant cheating, both on the men's and women's side, and these women are taking the brunt of it?
So I hope that this is punishment for just spying on New Zealand, which for me is, again, one act of cheating at the Olympics. That's enough to go home. If, in fact, this group of women is paying the price for past groups of women and past groups of men and people who are now no longer attached to this program, I think that's a much bigger problem, and that then, Herc, would be unfair. But I think just on cheating once, just on getting caught flying a drone over the New Zealand training session, it would be more than fair for this team to be sent home. Last word on it quickly to you.
If that's the case, and if proven guilty, John Herdman, if proven guilty, Bev got a year. What do you think John Herdman's going to get? It has to be unprecedented if found guilty.
Yeah, and depending on who's the jurisdiction there, right? He's managing at Toronto FC. Do they want to go down this road? Does FIFA impose something on them? It could be a very interesting couple weeks and couple months for John Herdman as the fallout of this continues to come. Not that big a deal. I mean, everybody's kind of downplaying this, aren't they, Herc?
Listen, I've not downplayed it, but I told you that I've seen things like this. And I am not downplaying. And you mentioned Sanborn, in his article, which was very well written. He explains kind of the reasons why U.S. soccer looked the way, diplomatic reasons, trying to get the World Cup
co-hosting a World Cup, yeah,
together.
co-hosting a World Cup with Canada in a couple of years.
You don't want to shake the boat in that sense. But I would ask Tyler Adams, who is everybody? Because when you say that, you put into question the U.S. men's national team. You put in question the U.S. women's national team. You can question Bournemouth. Who is everybody? And you have to be very, very careful when you say these things. And Tyler is a smart enough individual to kind of know better than go down this route. So I was very surprised.
All right, so maybe more than one, but at least for now, one more game for Canada at these Olympic Games on the women's side. They're going to face Colombia on Wednesday. A win, and they probably are going through to the quarterfinals. Maybe as first place, maybe as second place, maybe even as one of the third place teams that'll make the last 8 at the Paris Olympics.